Tony was there, lined up around the building. And I'm thinking, oh, what am I doing? I don't want to do this.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
First of all, I'm Phil Ward. Big fan. Big fan. Okay. Right now, what I do for a living is I'm a game show producer. And right now we're doing a show on the lot, and rumor has it, I hear it here first, folks, that they are in talks of possibly bringing back AG.
Well, they've been talking about that for 30 years.
Well, here's the thing. Great. Look, here's the thing. It's one thing when it's talk where like you're sitting around and you're just shooting the breeze and da-da-da-da. It's another thing when you're on a lot and people are talking about like the studio's budget. I'm over on the MGM lot right now, shooting a different show. But they're talking about what's coming up next, you know, because we all know a rap date is coming up soon. So we're going, what's going on? And they're talking budgets and American Gladiators. And you know, listen, when that happened, I gotta tell you, I ripped up a little bit, I peed my pants a little bit. Because that was exciting. I loved the show, and having worked at Nickelodeon, I always pissed off everybody by calling Guts American Gladiators for Kids. Because it was.
It was, yeah. But that's awesome that shows, you know, that they're trying to rekindle it.
Yeah.
But needless to say, I did stick it out to the audition at the Universal Studios. The first 3 events were eliminated about 90% of the athletes that were trying out. You had to run a 40-yard dash under 5 seconds. You had to do 30 pull-ups under a minute. And then you had to climb a rope, a 30-foot rope under a minute. And believe it or not, a lot of the bodybuilders couldn't do, you know, all 3 of them. And you know, luckily, you know, as a bodybuilder, professional bodybuilder I always maintained my athleticism, and I was able to, at 3:05, you know, I ran a 4:8:40. So made it through the first preliminary rounds, and next was the producers, you know, and sitting there, all the producers were sitting at the table, and they said, okay, why should we pick you? I'm thinking, okay. I said, look around, and there's all these athletes are prospective people that want to get on. I said, look around, what do you see? And they're looking around and they go, I don't know. I said, look, what do you see? They go, we don't know. I said, everyone is this tall. I said, they're all the same, they all look alike. I says, I'm 6'4" and I want to be called the tower. He goes, go over there.
Easy as that. Love it.
So that's how I got on.
That's the genius of like having a great mind, because I would have called you like meaty and speedy. You were big and fast, but man, that's great.
Well, they actually wanted to call me Hammer. And
Tower.
Yeah, and I fought for Tower.
Tower. Okay, so we'll continue that for a second. So Phil, take us through your journey. You've hosted a lot of shows, Nickelodeon, Nick Arcade, like a lot of famous shows. How did you get involved with all that?
Honestly, just an audition. But the genesis of the audition, look, I didn't want to do this for a living. It's amazing that I do this. I went to school, majored in something else, got a job, made my parents proud. And then stopped and said, I'm going to give this up with a 401k and benefits to go do stand-up comedy in a funky bar in Florida for $50 a night. Yay! But I was doing audience warm-up for another incarnation of Let's Make a Deal. They had brought back Monty Hall. It was shooting at the Disney lot in Florida, and it was a Dick Clark production. So, and I'd never seen them. Like as an audience warm-up, you're the comic. You come in about a half an hour before you start shooting. The people in the ivory tower don't even say hello, and don't need to. But one day we were doing the shoot, we got to the big deal. That's the end of the show on Let's Make a Deal. I've already done my best bits as the audience will. I got nothing else to say. It's thank you, good night. And all of a sudden the stage manager comes over and goes, Phil, I need you to stretch the elephant in the zone. He just took a dump on the floor in the back. So all of a sudden, as an elephant would. And so I all of a sudden had to stretch and fill time while they cleaned up the mess. And when we got done, I was like panicked. I mean, I got nothing else to say. But apparently I did something right, and everybody was fine. We got back to shooting, but before we started rolling, Dick Clark came down, and I never met him. I've been working on this show now for like 5 months. He comes down, and I'm told to introduce him. I'm like, oh my God, So there he is in the corner, little short man, black hair, and I introduce him, and as I walk away and hand him the mic, he grabs my arm and goes, hold on a second. Normally when something like this happens, us in the control room lose our minds and freak out, but I've never had more fun watching a disaster than I have watching this man handle it. Give it up for Phil Moore. And that night, I went home and called my agent and said, you know, maybe I should be doing more than just like, you know, entertaining the people behind the scenes. So she sent me out an audition 2 months later, and literally, Nick Arcade is the only TV show at that time ever auditioned for, and I booked it.
So first of all, like, yeah, let's give a round of applause. Because like, an endorsement like that is very few and far between, as we know, right? Especially from someone as esteemed as Dick Clark.
Exactly. You know, it's like God Small G himself came down and said, "What are you doing here talking about elephant poop? Go forth, my son." And that's really what, honestly, it was the magnitude, which is also why people at times seriously go like, you talk to everybody. And there's a piece of paper I wouldn't sign and a picture I won't stop and take. But because you never know how the smallest thing will affect you. Dick Clark, a man who was a legend, just gave me an attaboy for no reason. Didn't have to. I'd done my job. And it literally changed the course of my life. I never went back and did that.
Amazing. So Nick Arcade.
Well, I got a similar story to that.
Yeah.
Okay, not Dick Clark, but you guys know the guy by the name of Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Oh yeah.
May have heard of him, yeah.
So my very first day on the set of the show, you know, they pounded on my dressing room and they said, Tower, we need you on set. So I'm like this eager beaver, I'm getting ready, you know, like that. And I go running out of my dressing room and I run right into Arnold. And he looks at me and he goes, oh, you're that big guy that's on the cover. And I happen to be on the cover of Muscle and Fitness magazine that month. And he was down in the corner advertising Total Recall. He goes, you look good. He goes, come to my dressing room. He goes, we talk. And I looked at him. I got my stage manager saying, Tower, we need you. And I'm like, Arnold, can I get back to you? And he goes, sure, come back. I mean, the whole time I'm out there, my first day, I got Arnold waiting for me, you know? And I'm supposed to be going to do what I need to go do, but it went well, and I knocked on his door, and I said, hey, I'm back. He goes, come in. And he says to me, he goes, good to see a tall bodybuilder. He goes, all these short little guys, he goes, when they put their arms up, they're small. He goes, put your arm up, and I flex my arm for him, and he goes, see? He goes, that's a bicep. And so, talking to him, he says, get out of bodybuilding, no money. He goes, become a household name. And it really did resonate with me, because here I am, it's my first day on the show. Didn't know anything of where the show was going to go, if it was going to go a second season, third season. And little did I know that, 7 seasons later, we were the #1 show in the world in syndication. And I knew exactly what he meant by saying become a household name. And I was able to, throughout, he was kind of my mentor, and I had the opportunity to travel all over the country with him doing Planet Hollywood grand openings. And so we did myself, him, Bruce Willis, Demi Moore, Sylvester Stallone. We just had
Anyone else?
Well, we had a blast. He's a total prankster, and we just always had fun, and he was so right, become a household name.
It's amazing how, like I said, they're just that kind word, that pat on the back, that they don't have to do. But just giving you a word of encouragement, it can change your life, and obviously it differs.
Well, it's not only, like, to this day, if someone stops me in the airport, and my wife, I love her to death, but I wasn't married to her, back when the show was running, so she doesn't understand. She goes, why do these people, I can't believe people still want to take a picture with you. Well, yeah, I don't understand it either, because I'm still kind of a humble Wisconsin guy myself, because I'm from you guys. I don't know, how many Wisconsin people be out? All right, so I was born and raised here in Wisconsin. And so, someone wants to get a picture with me today or wants me to sign something, I'm the same way as you. I'm gonna stop, take the time, because there's a reason that I was there at one point, and I don't ever want them to say, oh, that Tower, he's a jerk. Because I've ridden with, I've been in first class airplanes with Dick Butkus. the football player, and people were coming up wanting his autograph, and he signed them, every one of them. And I'm thinking, God, that's a diehard fan, and they're gonna go back and say, God, I tried to get an autograph from Dick, and he wouldn't sign it.
See, that's why they say never meet your heroes, right? But like, at least there's two good examples of doing that, because like there are people out there that just will not give you the time of day. But that's really good that you guys have the opposite paradigm, which is awesome. I want to ask, so you get on Nick Arcade. Let's just talk about the concept, because you still produce game shows now. Just the concept of a game show. Let's start with video games specifically, because in the 80s there was a boom of them, right? Starcade, Nick Arcade, I'm from Canada, Video and Arcade Top 10. Like there were a lot of shows that centered around arcade competition, and esports still exists to this day. Right? What makes that genre? What made that genre so interesting and compelling, especially at the time?
It was the newness of it. I mean, plain and simple. There's a season for everything. Look, I remember with my dad growing up, it was watching Cowboys. Okay? It was watching Cowboys. When I was growing up in the 70s, all detective shows. All detective shows. Now we're in the superhero thing. Everything's superhero. So everything comes at a certain time. And at that particular time, it was like if a Buffalo Wings house had a brick wall and a place to put a microphone, they were having open mic night. And some places still do it, but it seemed to be the boom. They actually called it in the 80s the comedy boom. And it was what was going on at that time. And it was when I started doing stand-up. I started doing stand-up not right out of college. I was out for a while. And then just started doing it one day, and it was the right time. It is, as they call it, the perfect storm of things. You try to do it now, and it's funny because I'll talk to people, and if I'm like doing a podcast and I have time to tell my whole story, they ask it. I go, this doesn't happen, that was for me. Don't try it now. But back then, comedy boom, like I said, Waffle House was having a comedy night. It was amazing. But that's why. So video games had a moment. They had their time. They were brand new. Everybody was interested in it, and everybody was trying to top each other. See, nowadays, even if we try to get a sponsor on a show, a game show that I'm doing right now, we want PlayStation, we want Xbox, Microsoft to be a sponsor. We have to kiss their butt and pay them money out the yin yang to get them to be a part of our project. But back then, they were sending FedEx trucks to my house with video games on. Please put this game on your show. It was like they were hungry. They were trying to get known. Each person was trying to one-up the other person. So video games were in a boom, and everybody was trying to come up with the next thing. I've got 8 bits. I've got 16. Oh, bit size matters. So it was a moment in time that the companies were really trying to get it out there. And like I said, they weren't asking you for money. They were giving you stuff for free.
Well, that's one thing that Arnold said to me too. He goes, the more famous you get, the less you'll have to buy, and you can afford it to buy.
You can afford it,
but you get it for free.
Yep.
And then when I first was starting out, I was just thrilled that Reebok was my sponsor, and they were giving me free shoes. I didn't have to buy shoes.
I had them. I got the pumps. Remember the little pumps?
Those were amazing.
Oh my God!
I used to come out before we shot, so I wore the Reebok pumps. And so I used to come out before I do an event, and I get down on my one knee and I go to, hold on, I'm gonna pump up. And then I get it, and I go. Reebok loved it.
Reebok, we had Reebok, we had British Knights, I had shoes galore, all of the, and I'm not kidding, listen, for you video game aholics out here, like I am not joking, it'll be a Saturday morning, sitting at the house, ex-wife and the baby in the back, doorbell rings, it's UPS, it's FedEx, and I'm thinking you have A-Box? No, they have prototype stuff. We got stuff that you couldn't buy yet, asking us to put on. That's actually what we did with Sonic the Hedgehog 2. We had Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the show before you could buy it. Because of all the games, that's the one the executive said, oh, let's give this a try. But they were giving us stuff that you couldn't buy. So
can you imagine doing what we did then in the early 90s with no social media, no internet, no cell phones, no nothing? Oh, how big it would have been. Because for those of you, how many of you guys watched Muscles of Mayhem documentary on Netflix? Has anyone seen it? All right, a few of you.
Really good.
If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It was #1 on Netflix for over a week. So went to number 1 within 24 hours. So it's a 5-part docu-series. But we all got together before in production. We, all us gladiators, Nitro Laser, myself, Ice, Zap. So
Taking me back, Howard. Taking me back, brother.
we had a big taco night at our place, and we had them all over. We were, the producers were there, and but we all were chuckling that, oh my God, could you imagine if social media was around? Well, first of all, we'd all be in jail.
Or canceled.
Yeah, exactly. No, but just think about it, with the instant gratification. I think that's the difference between, celebrities now versus celebrities then. Like, we would show up at appearances and we'd have a line of thousands of people because they didn't have the instant gratification of pulling up one of these and having a picture of the last 3 things that I've done. Okay, so the only way they'd get a chance to see you or meet you is to come out and have the one-on-one interaction. Now everything is so virtual that it's not as big. I mean, so celebrities walk around LA now, they don't get hassled as much as we did, or back in the 90s when the internet wasn't the way that
You weren't as accessible back then.
Yeah, I agree. And also, listen, and the piggyback on that, because I agree 1,000%. And also, that speaks to, seriously, I mean this sincerely, that speaks to how awesome that fans are from that generation. Because we didn't have the instant gratification, we didn't have the way to market ourselves like people can just do now instantly. And here it is now, like over 30 years later, they know our shows. They know the theme song. But I'm sitting here right now. Listen, I'm not kidding y'all. Dun, 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 dun. Like 30 years, man. And that are those folks. I mean, they're come over singing stuff from the Nickelodeon show, stuff from our show. They remember it. And that shows the level of appreciation that they have. That they don't take it for granted, I think, like people do today.
Correct. And so for people starting out today, it's a lot harder. It really is. I mean, in my opinion. I mean, we did it because I was just thrilled to have a gig. I really was. And when you guys watch the documentary, it's going to lay out how bad they treated us as athletes, entertainers, performers, the producers, how bad. I mean, the 5th season, I had a compound fracture on my wrist. My bone was sticking out, okay? And the executive producers come back and the trainer's working on me, and he says, you need to suck this up or you don't get paid. So that's the level that, and this was my big gig for the year, and I was counting on the residuals, I was counting on personal appearances, I was counting on all the stuff that came after the fact, and if I wasn't getting paid, I wasn't on the show, my stock value went down. So, it's just a little bit different then than it is now. Now it's just a quick fix. I mean, I can make a post right now of this room right now, and 70-some thousand people will see it on my Instagram. That fast. Back then, I mean, there was no internet. So it's like
There was dial-up after a while.
Oh God! And then someone picks up the phone downstairs.
Come on! Or let a phone call come in and like, hey!
It's in the middle of life. What, in your opinion, why was American Gladiators so successful?
Well, I think the biggest success of the show, it was the first of its kind. It was the first reality-based athletic competition that ever hit the air. Okay, there's been a lot of shows trying to knock it off. American Ninja Warrior. I mean, it's a cool show, cool concept. The Rock had one out that was called Titan Games. They tried recreating the Gladiators. It only lasted 1 season, and they totally went off the theme. They were just stuck to the basics. We all, as the original Gladiators, it took us years to develop our characters. I mean, for those of you who know the characters, like Nitro, he was the asshole. That was the character that he developed. Laser was the, just a headbutting guy from Montana. And Ice she was cold as ice. But it just didn't happen overnight. When they recreated the show, I think it was in 2007, they had all these characters coming out, howling, crawling on the ground, trying to have this aria following of their characters, and no one knew. I said, what the hell is this guy doing? Howling like a wolf, because his name was Wolf. And it's like, you know, it just doesn't happen overnight. So the success of our show, I think it was just because it was us putting our heart and soul into our characters and creating over years our persona, our image.
Crazy that it like resonates even decades later. Just unbelievable. Phil, what makes a good game show?
Wow, that's a loaded question. A few things. I think first of all, you have to have a show. You know, actually, I do kind of know the answer. I was just working with a YouTuber, and I was trying to give him some tips for his content, and he wanted to get into sort of challenge-based things. So like they brought me in, and I think the thing is that makes a great game show is that you've got to be entertained with whatever's going on, regardless of if the people win or not. That is where I think a lot of the shows now are gimmicky, and they're, you know, I've been in the meetings, I've been in the studio, I've listened to, you know, 5'2" sweet women yell at me like this guy, big, you know, like, ah! Because they're going, we gotta get somebody to win, or else we're not gonna be on. But I always go, look, when you watch like something like Family Feud, if they don't get the $20,000, if they don't win the car, you're still entertained. You know, when you watch American Gladiators, if they didn't make it, if no one won, if the Gladiators came out ahead, if the combatants came out ahead, you were still entertained. Wheel of Fortune, oh gee, you didn't get the $65,000, but I was still entertained. I think that is the key, no matter what's going on inside. And then the second thing is viewer playability. Viewer playability. My mother's favorite game show in the world is Wheel of Fortune. Loves it to death. From home. I took her to a taping in LA where she can't go. It's a W! Hated it. Hated being there. Literally, she's like, I've taken her to the Price is Right. She and my cousin got up on stage. I've taken her to a bunch of game shows. She loves game shows. Some people in their family want their children to be doctors or lawyers. The fact that her son is a game show producer and former game show host, you would think that I was the president. But I took her to a taping of Wheel of Fortune. She loves to play along. She loves to yell at the screen. She loves to yell at them. And folks here that watch Big Arcade, these grown-ups used to tell me when they were 12 and 13 years old, they'd be sitting at home going, that kid is so stupid! And that's what it's so it's got to be, the content has to be good enough so that you are entertained whether or not the contestants win or not. And number two, the audience at home has to be able to play along.
And to kind of piggyback on that as well, Phil, is our show, the David and Goliath effect, you know, with you actually got people rooting for the underdog, the little guys. And that was cool too, because again, it was the interaction of people rooting for the gladiators at home and also the contestants at home. And I mean, when we did a 152 city tour, that was brutal. And I don't know if you've ever been on road different stop to stop to stop.
And we've done a couple of tours, 42 city tour, not quite as many, but
yeah. Still.
But
you weren't physically performing. Like we went 4 days in a row and a day off.
We were physically performing, but sometimes we had to climb the aggro crap.
So, you know, it's interesting, these people would come up to us and say, oh my gosh, you know, we set up a gladiator obstacle course in our backyard to practice for this. So they were entertained and participated at home. But that's the cool thing.
See, that's a great point about the David and Goliath, because like some of my favorite memories of watching American Gladiators is seeing the puny guy somehow winning in the joust against this giant behemoth human.
I never lost.
It rarely happens. But definitely not against Tower, that's for sure.
I was 150-0 in joust. Just
never lost?
Never lost.
Never came close?
Came close once to, I don't know, you guys remember Two Scoops?
Oh yeah.
Okay, Two Scoops was the only guy that got me going sideways, but I knew enough to keep my feet on the platform before his feet left the platform. That was the only one where that I came close and went, oh shit.
Rumor has that the Two Scoops percentage still runs to this very day.
Really?
probably like 9,000,000% right now.
What were your favorite events to do and your least favorite events to do?
Well, my least favorite event was the wall, the rock wall, because the laws of at 300 pounds, the laws of gravity just aren't in my favor. So, for those of you who remember the rock wall, the contestants got a 10-second head start to get going. So I was always hoping to get a contestant that wasn't very good, so I would come up and I'd bang the wall really hard and jump, and I'd be able to I wouldn't have to go up the wall. I'd be able to pull them off before they got up high enough. The other one was the sky track, where the upside down on the Velcro.
That hurt you. Watch.
Oh, it was brutal. They didn't have a harness big enough for me, and so I felt like I was going to come out of it, upside down. So I despise that one. But Powerball is probably my favorite because it's just a head-banging event. That's the event that pretty much always got hurt on the most. I broke my nose twice in that show. I got 44 stitches in my forehead. Turbo went down with a horrific knee injury, but that was just no pads, football tackle, and I hated to lose in that game. So it was like headbanging.
Wow. I got to, if you notice too, and I have, because I produce game shows now, is there's some piece of American Gladiators that shows up in every physical competition out there. I mean, every time I turn around, I look at the show and I'm like, they're spouting as if this is original, the coolest thing you've ever seen. I'm like, no, that's Gladiator season 3.
You're right. You're right. Yeah. But the great thing about it is, I guess that's a compliment when they're taking what we did and trying to redo it today.
What sucks is when they mess it up, and all of a sudden, if people remember it or find out, they go, well, that Gladiators must have sucked. Because that game's, no, they just screwed it up.
Well, I remember Laser and I went in to meet with the producers when they were trying to revamp it in 2007, and we wanted to be on it again. So we went and met with the producers, and I'll never forget this. First of all, our meeting was at 10 o'clock. The producer was over 20 minutes late, okay, which pissed me off. So I remember sitting in the office, and he's a kid. He's sitting in the back of his chair, he's got the computer like this, and he's got the computer right here, and he's typing, we're on the other side, I can hardly see him. And he's trying to as well, I feel that the show should have water, fire, flames, and this here, and he's continuing to type. And we're talking, and he's not paying attention to a word we're saying. So I got up, took his computer, and I shut his computer. I said, we have a meeting, and you're disrespecting us? I says, how old are you? He goes, I'm 30. I said, were you even born when the original show? I said, and you're sitting there paying half attention to us and telling us how you think the show should be? I said, something's wrong here. I said, we're done with this meeting. Because again, everyone thinks that they know the way it should be. When if you would just come to us and say, what do you guys think? Do you guys want to be creative consultants on this, or do you want to work with Gladiators to get them up? No, they didn't, but they wanted to run it, and it failed after 13 episodes. Wow.
Phil, shows that you've either hosted or produced in the game show realm, which ones are you most proud of?
Oh, wow. Okay, well, and I'm not just saying this because, but Nick Arcade. It was the first thing I'd ever done, and it was a show, like in a weird sense, like Gladiators. Like you mentioned earlier, all the different video game shows have been on. But the reason why that one, people still know it to this day, is it did something that no other video game show ever did. And that was before Oculus Rift, before AI, we put people inside of a video game. 30 years ago, in 1990, we were taking two real people and making them Mario and Luigi type characters to run around in a computer-generated world. This is before the thing you can put in your face now, So that was the big thing. That's why I think it differs. So that one. And then the other one is also a Nickelodeon show. It was the second show that I hosted called You're On. And most people don't remember You're On, and it's kind of, that was when, you remember, it was when Nickelodeon was about to shut down. So unfortunately, there was no marketing, there was no advertising, the writing was on the wall, Nick Studios in Florida was going to be closing. But the difference between, the thing I loved about that show is, I finally knew what I was doing. Nick Arcade was like year one, first thing I'd ever done. Okay, so every day I'm like trying to pronounce Dr. Robotnik, and yes, I said Robonet on camera, leave me alone. Trying to remember to say all of these crazy games. About 10 years later, in 1999, I'm doing You're On, and I'm the seasoned pro. I've done tours, I've done a bunch of shows, figure it out, and I knew exactly what was on. The other show was one that you will
Can I
never
just say
see.
one thing?
Yeah.
I relate to you so much on the name thing. You read one wrong athlete name on SportsCenter, and it lives with you forever. Dude, I feel you to my core. You know what I'm talking about.
Forever.
You say one syllable wrong, and it's on social media for the rest of time.
That's the era we're in right now.
Yeah, I wake up in the middle of the night, like to this day, 32 years later, Dr. Robotnik. It's a Robotnik film. Robotnik. It's Dr. Robotnik. And I go back in time. The last show that I'm super proud of is one y'all will never, ever see. And it is this I felt like you Gladiators. It was a show for NBC, and it was called Slip and Slide. If you look it up online, basically people refer to it as shit and slide. Because while we were shooting the show, bacteria got in our water and everybody got the runs. And but basically, it was a show that was in partnership with Whammo, the people that made Slip and Slide. We literally built a theme park in Simi Valley. We're talking like 80 stairs to get to the top, to launch people down a giant slip and slide and get into giant and run into huge bowling pits. It was fantastic! And as a producer and creator of the show, before we put real people on it, we have to test it. I got video I can show you later on.
Please do.
But man, oh man, we would get jacked up. Like we come down and like there's a water break supposed to slow you down, you get air, and then you hit the back wall and it would break. And then we just stop and wake up and we tap our head and sit up and go, all right, I think we need to add more water in the water break. Can I have an aspirin? What ended up happening was we shot this show, and we shot it what they call in pods where we shot like Legends of the Hidden Temple shot like this, and so did Guts. The set pieces were so big that you didn't shoot the show literally. You know, you have 4 contestants come out and do one game. Then you bring in 4 new contestants and do that game. And you were slowly narrowing down. Then the next day, you bring back the winners and they go to game number 2. All leading up to the finale where each now, the winning pair from like 10 episodes come back and they run the bonus round. So when you edit it together, you see this one, these 4 people, then it gets down to 3 people, down to 2 people, and then 1 winner. But before we got to shooting any in-games, we all got the runny doo-doos. And so we have a half-hour show, we have 22 minutes of footage and nobody, quote unquote, wins. We never shot one in-game. But tell me, folks, you wouldn't believe that I created this game where you come sliding down and you fly off the edge of this ramp and there's a pool with circular colored inflatable things in it, and you were a human ski ball. It was insanely cool. We got jacked up. I still got cuts and bruises, and no one will ever see it except what I show you on my phone later.
Very unfortunate that the slip and slide was yellow in this situation. Very unfortunate.
Yeah,
What's that, folks?
You would think that the show would have like a big thing like NBC would have.
But remember, it's an NBC show.
Yeah, you would think that the NBC would have testers, that instead of you guys testing it. Well, with us, when they would come up with the executive producer would come up with a new game, we'd come in and we'd have to test the events. So yeah, and I remember doing the testing event for slingshot, where we jump off the cylinder, jump down, we're on a bungee cord, and it yanks you up. And I remember, so we got our bungee people there, and I'm up on the platform. I said, "You sure you got enough bungees on here for me?" "Oh yeah, you got enough bungees." So there I go, I jump, and I go straight to the floor. Oh, straight to the floor. I look up at this guy and says, "Wasn't enough, was it?" So
We got some like stories.
So again, that was all the fun stuff that I remember doing testing Hang Tough when we did the rings. testing that. And I remember they just had the mats underneath us. It wasn't official mats. And I remember dropping down. I love the hang tough, by the way. It was a lot of fun. And I remember dropping down and hitting right between where the mats came together, and they were on rollers, and it split. And I went all the way down to the concrete floor and landed. And I had to sit on a donut for like 4 weeks because I bruised my tailbone. You know, so those are the things that, you know, I look back and I chuckle about it.
Yeah.
But you would think that they would have like crash dummies.
No, we were, well, the producers of my show, we were the crash dummies. Before we bring in people to test it, we had to workshop it. Yeah.
Who's got questions in the audience? I want to take the rest of the time to whatever questions you guys got. There's one right here.
Yeah, so before I put my question in, not only do I didn't see too many episodes here on, but I actually, you know, they were shooting it when I, in the 90s, had a chance to visit the Nickelodeon studios in Orlando and we were on vacation there. So I actually they were like filming it right when we were going through. So that was kind of a neat thing there. But I know Nickelodeon had a tendency, especially in like the days in the 90s, with a few exceptions, to just sort of end the show after 2 or 3 seasons, even if it was really popular, including the games. Basically, if you weren't like, you can't do that on television or double there. It was pretty tendency. I assume that was also the situation with Nick Arcade. They decided they had enough of it after a while, or?
Well, yes, you're right. Number one, the weird thing about Children's Network is your audience is always changing. You grow out of it, and then a new group of people get old enough to start watching it. So as soon as you lose, I'm just making an arbitrary number, as soon as you lose 10,000 viewers, 10,000 new discover the remote control. And so your audience is always turning over. So that's the one reason why they had a limited amount of shows. They didn't really need to have to keep feeding the same audience, because our audience always outgrew us, and another audience grew into us. Okay, that's number one. And number two, with Nick Arcade, the one thing that was unique, and maybe, I don't want to say, this isn't the right word, but to its detriment, is it's a show that couldn't be evergreen. And by that meaning, you watch Double Dare, and aside from the haircuts and the British Knights and the ColecoVision they give away, you wouldn't know necessarily that the show wasn't shot 10 years ago. However, when you watch a show and it's 8-bit Mario or ActRaiser or something like that, you know that's an old show. And so that's another thing. The show itself, by virtue of the games we had on it, dated it.
All right, so you first, and then you.
Yes, Steve, what was your training regimen like back in the day?
Well, it really doesn't change much. I mean, I'm still, I'm actually training right now for the Masters Mr. America, which will be next July, not this coming July, but next July. But my training regimen then, when we're pre-season or pre-filming, I would do more of the stretching and stuff so I didn't pull a muscle. More core exercises, got away from lifting heavy, because again, when you lift heavy, it weakens your tendons and ligaments. So I did more endurance training back then. And then we always stayed on Laser and I were always on a competition diet as far as bodybuilding competition. 2.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And we always kept that in tune.
So this one is also for Tower. So during your run on AG, who would you say were the most memorable contenders you went up against?
During the run on when?
AG.
Oh, okay. Two Scoops is very memorable. Also, there was a chiropractor, doctor from down San Clemente, dark hair guy. A guy you would look at, just looked like an average guy. And he just, he was one of these athletes who was just a gifted athlete. And God, what is his name? I don't remember, but he was good. And then we had this rodeo guy that was awesome. And I mean, he was a bull rider. So this guy was just tougher than all get out. And he was one of those like the ever-ready bunnies. I mean, we knocked the crap out of him and he just got right back up.
One more. He's getting the crap knocked out of him by bulls. So I guess
exactly.
Literal bulls.
This question's for Phil. I remember you said FedEx and UPS were sending you all these prototype games. At the start of each round of Nick Arcade, they would have the face-off games, so who would get control of Mikey. Were those face-off games or prototypes that they would send you, or are those games that were made by the show for the show?
Made by the show for the show.
Okay.
Here's the weird thing. Nick Arcade is an interesting phenomenon, and again, seriously, the fans are why people still even know what it is. The show was so expensive because of technology being brand new, and they were doing something so innovative that you can't. I don't own a marketing picture of me standing on the set. Everybody else has one. There's Mike and Mo, there's Mark and Robin, there's Kurt with the OMAC. There's none of me. Every picture is always blurred because I'm always moving. It's a screenshot. So it was like, what was your question?
The games that you got sent.
Oh yeah, the games. Okay, so in order to keep our costs down, they wanted to have the money go into two areas. Number one, the video games that we played in the video challenge, because those are the games that people had at home. So we wanted to relate to the people. We wanted to bring on average people to look to represent you, to play the games that you were playing at home. But then the big kick at the end was taking two people, put them inside a video game. So all the money went into that. So basically they had a couple of extremely talented guys who now work for Ubisoft, but they just came up with variations of different Pong games and stuff and running games for the opening games to save money somewhere. It's like either we do headshots for Phil or we have an opening game. They went for opening game.
Go ahead.
Time for so this question is actually for both of you guys. Just on your respective shows, do you guys feel like that there was anything you felt like could have been added to your shows, or maybe modified in terms of like the format, like maybe like an hour longer, or just like how each game is like being played? Like if you had to say if there was any change, if you had to make any changes to the shows.
For me, it was if we got a third season. Yeah, it's a show only had 2 seasons. It blows my mind that people still talk about this thing. It's only 2 seasons. But we got sort of the budget for our show sort of got milked into Global Guts. Once Global Guts, once it went global, I was going to work for free. But the one thing that we had started to get into at the end of season 2 was testing the waters for having celebrity versions of the show. We had the cast of Clover Six Plays It All on an episode. We had the cast of some of the shorts on an episode. And by the time we got to season 3, I was pronouncing things better. I was doing a little bit of writing on the show. And so now I had a little more input into the things. And if we had gotten to season 3, I had pitched the season premiere to be the battle of the game show hosts. So it'd be Summer Sanders and Michael O'Malley versus Kurt Fogg and Mark Summers, and I'm hosting all 5 Nickelodeon game show hosts on Nick Arcade at one time.
You know, you should produce game shows. That's a great idea.
Well, for me, I think if we just if they would have came to us for some creative input, because we're the ones that were in the trenches, putting the games and experiencing. If they would just come and say, hey, what do you think about this? How can we tweak this to make this look better? Do you remember the Atmosphere, the big giant ball? All right, so that ball was that was a dangerous event, because that ball, every time it collide, parts of the metal meshing would push inside, and we would cut our hands. I remember Gemini falling in there and getting like 22 stitches in his glue. So there was a lot of things that if we could have just helped give them some cautious things for make it safer for us. Because again, they didn't care. They just didn't care about us.
All right, big round of applause for our panelists. That was terrific. Thank you, guys. Before everybody goes, if you're willing to participate, I'd like to take a big group picture. That would be really cool. So let's go down there. If you can come up to the stage and take a...
Yeah, you know what? Let's do it. Come on. I want to do it too. We should take a selfie.
If you guys, if you don't mind, just stand and just come with a group.
Everybody stand up. Oh, there we go. Ah, there we go. Get over here.
guys keep